Hello, I'm Slávek, Head of Engineering at Evolveum, and today it will be my pleasure to show you demo of MidPoint. This is our public live demo. It's available at midpoint.evolveum.com, so you can even try it yourself. And here on this link, you can find documentation for it explaining what is configured and the use cases there. First thing, I will just sign in as administrator. And this is the overall look and feel of the MidPoint. MidPoint is traditional IGA IDM tool, so it gets mostly the feature you could expect and something extra that makes us unique. So I will try to quickly share all of it. Let me first show you a list of users. This demo is based on the workshop of Leonardo da Vinci, so you can see users like Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and so on. But first, let's look at integration. So for this, we have resources, and resources that are systems that are connected directly to MidPoint. We are using connectors for that. Connector is something like the API adapter for the given system. In this demo, we are just using some generic one like CSV connector, database table connector, or LDAP connector. In practice, you can have many more like for Google, Microsoft services, and many others, as well as some generic connectors like, for example, Skim, which is getting more and more popular. When you have the connector acts only as the adapter, and rest of the configuration is really just configuration midpoint. So for example, I can open HR feed here, and I can check what accounts are available in my HR system. Of course, I don't want to do this manually. I want to automate it so we can configure various things. For example, how accounts are synchronized, or quite typical are attribute mappings. So I can see how individual attributes coming from my HR systems are mapped into MidPoint. So for example, here, attribute which is in HR system called EMP_num is stored as is without any modification into personal number in MidPoint. Similarly, for any other attributes, then we can have even some scripting. For example, here we are taking artistic name of a user as a source and we want to generate an email address. And for this, we can have a simple script. In this case, we are just normalizing the inputs, removing white spaces, special characters, and so on, and just appending at leonardosworkshop.org. And with this principle, you can easily modify the data on input as well as on output. And when we have this, we can run scheduled tasks to automatically synchronize the users. We have two options. We have reconciliation task, which is recommended to run depending on the case. Sometimes it's once a day, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month, which always checks all the identities and makes sure that all these attribute transformation rules, synchronization rules, lifecycle rules are correct. So basically just reconciling the state. Or we are supporting something we call live synchronization, which is just checking for the updates and immediately process them. So this is how you get changes into MidPoint. Anything that might go out of MidPoint as a reaction to some events is always done immediately. So you don't need any task for provisioning out of the MidPoint. So when we have the users, you can open any of the user. You have all these attributes that were synchronized or can be manually managed in the user interface. And you can assign user into roles, organization units, or other services, devices, whatever you want to manage. MidPoint is quite generic, so it allows you to manage any type of identities. It might be persons, internal, external. For universities, we are supporting, of course, students and also, of course, non-human identities, which are getting more and more tractions. Same with your role model, organization model. It's very dynamic and anything can be supported and configured. From the IGA point of view, we have this all accesses nice view, which telling you what services and roles this user has access to. For example, MidPoint itself is modeled within MidPoint and access to it. And we can see, for example, this user is a full-time employee, that's a business role, have access to MidPoint as an end user, that's an application role, and it's just under umbrella of MidPoint application itself. Some accesses can be done directly, and in that case, we are interested who created the access and when. Yeah. Getting to organization structure, we have organization tree, which can contain multiple trees. So for example, here we have classical organization structure with departments and subdepartments, and also we have a project structure. For roles, we are supporting application roles, business roles, or generic roles, but you can always introduce your new archetype. So if you are not used to call it application roles, business roles, for example, you prefer to have something like entitlements, you can configure the view to support this. I can quickly show you how a new role is created. For example, if I want to create an application role, first I'm defining for which application. So here you can have applications in a way that even end users can understand them with some icons, nice description. So let's say this is my application for which I want to do application role. I just put some basic attributes, and then I need to configure governance for the role. So who is, for example, owner, configure membership, or configure provisioning, because application role typically needs to be provisioned as some of entitlement. Another example might be how to create a business role. Again, I put some simple attributes. Then I'm selecting which applications role should be included in this business role. So again, I'm selecting, and then I'm configuring the same thing. So I'm configuring governance, selecting who is manager, owner, approval of this role, or configuring membership, assigning individual users. And when I'm happy, I can just open the role and see all its detail, fine-tune it if needed. Yeah, then MidPoint also supports various type of dashboards. For example, I can show you license dashboard, monitoring licenses on my application. You can even see there are some visual changes when the number of licenses is needed, and MidPoint can be configured to only report some limits, or if necessary, even make sure that this number is not exceeded. This is all configurable. I would say this is like main thing of MidPoint. A lot of things can be configured. MidPoint doesn't force you to any particular way how it's supposed to be deployed and configured, but rather gives you a tool to model your identity, your data structures, your roles, organization unit, applications, whatever you have. Define relation, define what they mean, and how they could be either enforced using policies or provisioned to the outside world. I can also show you how MidPoint looks from the end user point of view and show you, for example, access request process. So now I will sign out and sign in as a Rafael. Password is the same in case you want to test it yourself. And here I have simple view as end user. Again, this is configurable. You can define if user should see his accesses, requests, by accounts, or if you want to present more or less information. For example, here I have it configured so user can see its own profile, but without ability to modify anything, just to see. And you can notice this menu is simplified and can be simplified even more if you decided to have it. MidPoint also supports work with credentials, changing password. Some people prefer to have MidPoint doing it, and MidPoint is also able to provision the password. Other people having some access management, single sign-on solution, so this can be completely disabled. It's up to every person deploying MidPoint. So getting to the request access, user can request access is a simple graphical wizard style of graphical user interface. So let's say I'm requesting for myself. Then what type of request as end user? This is configured to only have default type of access, but sometimes you might request to be owner of some object. Then I open in role catalog. Because it's a demo, I have only a single role, again with some nice icon and description for the end users. I can have some filters, for example, based on organization unit, but also based on the roles of the teammate. So I might check what my teammate has the roles if I have access to see it, and based on it, select what I want to request. So the request works as an eShop. I'm adding rows to cart, and when I'm happy, I'm moving to the shopping cart. Here, I can demonstrate segregation of duty. you can see this last step, find a conflict. So what I can do is open conflict solver, and I can see there is a violation of segregation of duty policy, one role is excluding the other. So I want to decide what I want to do. So let's say I want to keep the new one and really request it. So I'm fixing the conflict, getting back to the shopping cart. I can select validity, put some comment for the person who will be doing the approval, and then submit my request. And you can see in my request, the request is here. It's currently pending. So I'm logging out, getting back as an administrator. Yeah, because I want to keep this short, I won't show you the full approval process. I can just show you there is a case pending, and if I open detail of this case, I can see, for example, this request have two stages of approval. First stage is approval by direct manager, which is Leonardo da Vinci in this case. And second stage is approval by group, Council of Patrons. So anyone from this group needs to approve it. Then with request approvals is also crucial to have process how to remove the accesses. For this, we have a certification campaign. So for example, here I have a campaign for certify assignments to two rows contractor and patron. So I can just prepare this campaign. I can start it in real scenario. This will be done fully automatically. It will be scheduled, but now because it's demo, I just starting the campaign manually. And I can open the campaign details, and now we can see who has access to which role and who are the reviewers for that access. Again, there might be multiple stages. This is all configurable. Now the responsible people need to decide if this person should have access or not, and then the campaign will be closed and evaluated. The evaluation might be just a report that someone will check, or it can be even automated. So if the reviewers decide this access is no longer needed, it might be remediated automatically and accesses might be removed. There are some statistics available. Now it's empty because I just started the campaign. Yeah, there are many more features. We have archetype for fine-tuning, notifications. We have some marks for marking exception and helping you with the cleaning of the data. There are some automated tasks that can be configured. There are many things, of course, audit logs. We have even some analytics features, right? Or mining, outlier detection. So there is many more. Just to keep this short, I will show you one last feature, which is simulation, which I believe is quite unique for MidPoint. So what we can do, we are trying to solve the problem when if you have system complex like this with many rows, relations, policies, data transformation, sometimes it's very hard to evaluate what will happen if you change the configuration or if you introduce new piece of configuration. So we have simulations enable you to simulate the result before you apply it in production. So for example, here in my HR system, I can open accounts and go to attribute mappings, which we already briefly covered. And here in this corporate email address, which is generating the email address, it's set to be only proposed, ready to be simulated. And similar rule I have in my target system. So in my LDAP server, again, I will check attribute mappings for accounts. And here on the outbound, so from MidPoint out, again, email address from MidPoint as is into mail attribute in LDAP, again, in proposed mode. And now I have this, I can run system-wide simulation telling me what would happen if these two changes would be put into production. So I open task and I have recomputation task, which recompute all the users, but in simulated mode. I will run it. Because I have only few users, it should be done almost immediately. And now I'm able to show the simulation results. And I can see how many objects were modified, unmodified, processed, and so on. And on the right side, I have some important events. For example, two of my resource means external objects were affected, and I can open it and check. For example, on this account, it's account with UID Raphael in my LDAP server. Email was changed from Raphael to Raphael. We know this old value because using the connector, MidPoint can even check the data which are on the target system and compare it with the new computed value and tell you exactly each difference that would be made. Same here for King Francis. Again, his email is changed. And sometimes when you are deploying a huge change, you cannot modify everything, but you want to put the rule into practice. So we are even able to put a mark and, for example, add a mark do not touch. That will tell MidPoint do not touch this account for this given moment. So I can mark this as an exception and return back to it later. Now I can even run the simulation again. And when it's done, it shows me only a single change. So because the mark is already in place, so I can evaluate it if I want, and I have many changes, I can even download it and process with some external tool to make sure everything is correct. And with this, deploying new functionality on the production shouldn't be that painful. So this concludes the demo for today. I focused mostly on more advanced concept. I didn't cover the basics, but they are configured there as well. If you want, you can explore the whole demo on demo.evolveum.com, which is available when you can go through it by yourself. And also there is a documentation explaining what use cases are available there.